Today, I've been kind of enjoying making videos where I just kind of outline the cognitive dissonance of white people, and I use that to more or less highlight why we're all fucked as a country. Because if you can't see past your own delusion, then what hope do you have to see in the moment? So this video, it just was
of
happened
a
to be coming across my YouTube feed, right? So I don't know who this guy is. I don't know who these people are. I have no fucking idea. I'm just one of the many people that come across my YouTube feed, and we're gonna make a lot of these videos. So I'm just gonna read the title. I have no idea what these people are about, but I can read to some extent. They seem to be talking about the times. They seem to be talking about this stuff, and they seem to be concerned in the same way that I'm concerned about the future of our country. Okay? Now, again, I use this video to explain how we are fucked. We, as in we the people. Through the lens that is white privilege. I have no idea what they're getting ready to talk about, but what I do know, what they're not going to cover, is civil rights issues. The kind that says black people just lost the right to vote in Louisiana. The kind that says this country is targeting non-whites and throwing them into dungeons and using their children as free slave labor. Let's see if any of that's covered in this. Strong men can fail if we act with Joyce Vance.
retreating into my academic work. I'm teaching this fall a seminar on the wise exercise of prosecutorial discretion, which feels a little bit real right now in this moment. I may need therapy if I'm going to have to
Yeah,
teach
yeah,
that class.
yeah.
But thank you to everybody who's joining us. I see that you guys are telling us where you're from in the comments. Even someone from Graham Plattner country up in Maine. I don't know if that means that you're down east or if you're in coastal Maine by the beaches, but that's certainly an interesting political race. Our guest today is Timothy Snyder, who needs absolutely no introduction. Seminal reading, I think, for all of us. And I'm so happy to have you with us today because I, for one, am super tired of people who are sugarcoating where we are. And I think this is a great moment for plain talk and realistic talk about what it's going to take. Today, my readers actually submitted questions for us, and they're really great questions. So I thought maybe we would just jump right into the soup with them if that suits you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, let's go. Um, your most recent column on your Substack is titled Utopias of Violence. And in it, you write that in the long term, the lesson for Americans is that our domestic politics will have to be restructured such that no aspiring tyrant can fight wars of whimsy.
I think we can all agree to that.
I both like and passionately dislike the phrase wars of whimsy because I think it's dead on the money, which is why I like it. And it's dead on the money, which is why I don't like it. But you continue, you move on from Venezuela and obviously Iran, and you write, there is a more pressing concern for Americans. Will that tyrannical emotional state that brought us the war now be applied inside the United States? And of course,
Yes.
there was reporting last week on Stephen Miller and Trump wanting to revoke habeas, wanting to invoke the Insurrection Act. A lot of listener questions focused on this notion of what is going to happen to us? What should we be worried about?
Hmm.
being thrown in the dungeons.
Yeah, let me start with sugarcoating. I mean, I think sugarcoating is essentially collaboration.
Is she sugarcoating right now? That better be sugarless.
So when you sugarcoat, not you, but like when one sugarcoats, right, then one is taking time away from everybody who needs to be reacting. And when you take time away from everybody who needs to be reacting, then you're helping the process along. And so I don't try to be direct in order to frighten people.
Does he need a mirror?
I try to be direct because if we see what it is that's happening around us, then we have a chance of actually doing something. If we choose to use our intellectual energy to delude ourselves, then we end up making ourselves helpless. So, just to explain a tiny bit about that piece for people who might not have read it, what I was trying to say is that there's a mode, and the Trump people aren't the only people who have this, but they've had it lately in a very clear way of thinking that if you're violent, then suddenly everything stops and the world just does what you want. And so, like the war in Iran is a very clear example
Right.
of that, where Trump
Might makes right.
and Hegseth and Vance and others made these incredibly arrogant statements at the beginning of the war and throughout about how now everything was different, they've changed, they've won, and so now everyone's going to have to follow our lead, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, that turned out to be ridiculous. We lost the war, we capitulated. It may take a while for that to sink in because we're Americans. We don't like to notice we've lost wars. We can lose them quickly. We don't notice so quickly. We lost this one very quickly. It's been over for a long time now, and all that's really left is like just how bad the terms of the settlement are. So the
In the
point
South,
there,
we call that all over but the shouting.
yeah, or it's all over but the whimpering, I think, or the
Yeah.
shouting that's covering the whimpering. But so that's just, but analytically, that's an example of how violence doesn't go the way you think it's going to go. And the same is true domestically. So if they revoke habeas, or if they try to use the armed forces to warp the elections, that's also not going to go the way they think it's going to go. Right? Just as a matter of fact, that will lead to wildly unpredictable results. But I don't think they know that. And so, therefore, one has to talk about it and prepare for it and make it less likely. Because if we talk about it and put it in the public sphere, that means that the armed forces and other people who might just kind of go into this step by step are much less likely to do so. So we have to talk about how if they tried it wouldn't work. But also we have to talk about how if they try it, people will be committing crimes, people will be going to prison, and if they try it, bad things will also happen to the people who are trying it.
You know, I think it was Justice Brandeis who said sunlight is the best disinfectant, which actually turns out to be true in so many ways. A well-educated public is the key to surviving in an era like that. I think that's why we are all here, almost 2,000 of us in the middle of a Monday afternoon. But it's very much true. I think the cut to the chase question that I got from a lot of folks today, and this is right within your wheelhouse, so I think I'll just ask it up front, is how do dictatorships end? Are we in the end games yet? What really is it based on history? We've seen Hungary recently come out. We saw South Korea avoid. There are other cautionary tales that don't have happy endings. How does it end? I think you're muted.
Okay, is that better?
That's better.
Okay, good. Um, so like it's important to remember that history isn't a movie script, and so you can't just kind of turn the pages and figure out what's going to happen in the end. You're in history, like we're all in history all the time, and that's why history is different than, say, classical physics, or it's different
I
than
mean,
playing pool, right? Where you can just kind of you can, once the ball has been hit, if you know everything, you can predict what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
History is not like that because we are part of it and we are unpredictable. And of course, that's the lesson for any history which involves
hold
freedom, because
on. You
freedom is
guys don't get to see
precisely
this
about
part.
our ability to be unpredictable. And the
So,
whole history of success as a freedom involves people.
pause. File. Save. Let's just go mirror one.
Doing things that they didn't even necessarily themselves predict that they were going to do. So that's just a really important caveat before I answer this question, because I can talk about variables and processes, but the bottom line truth is that if we spectate, we lose. If we see ourselves as being involved, we have a chance at winning. So yeah, of course, dictators fail. We're in a
How do you describe the shape of her head? Like, do we have any other... That's not her head. There we go. Yeah, I don't know what to call that.
very typical
Which
situation
the
win we have an
camera's like
aspiring
this.
dictator
That's
who
why it's
faces an
making it look that way.
election. He's wildly unpopular. His policies are unpopular.
I mean, hold the phone.
He's flailing.
Crap. Crap. Oops. Oh god. Well, there's one. Okay, that seems recent. Alright. Okay. Pretty close. I think this is just what happens when we look into screens. Like when we sit there and do this all day long.
But the election is going to be tough. It's going to be, in certain respects, rigged against the opposition. It's going to require a big win by the opposition. And that big win involves two things that make it big, three things. One is the number of votes. The second is the aspirations of the people who are winning it. And the third is the sense that it's being won by a big coalition and not just a political party.
Mhm.
And this is like, I'm trying to say this in a kind of like everyday, like activist way, but this is also where the political science is at.
So you think that I mean, in some ways, that's deceptively simple. It's very much my thinking as a lawyer, right? Nothing defeats a gerrymander like outsized turnout. I mean, that's the reality about gerrymanders. They work best with a disillusioned population where a low percentage
Mhm.
of the population votes. Is that enough to break a dictatorship? One election, one midterm election?
Well, so let me just take the bait
Yeah,
and swallow it,
there was a
because
debate there.
one thing that disturbs me and concerns me is when Democrats, and I mean electeds and party activists and also
Left versus right language.
voters, when they think, okay, it's a midterm election, we're going to win it big, we're naturally going to win it big because it's a midterm election, and you always do, because he's unpopular, because the polling, etc. And so that for me is actually kind of passivity, because that in itself won't be enough. And indeed, like one of the dangers that I see, in fact, this is the thing that maybe the thing that worries me the most, is if you win but you don't know why you won, you're going to lose.
919.
Teaching this fall a seminar on the wise exercise of prosecutorial discretion, which feels a little bit real right now in this moment. I may need therapy if I'm going to have to teach that class. But thank you to everybody who's joining us. I see that you guys are telling us where you're from in the comments. Even someone from Graham Plattner country up in Maine. I don't know if that means that you're down east or if you're in coastal Maine by the beaches, but that's certainly an interesting political race. Our guest today is Timothy Snyder, who needs absolutely no introduction. Seminal reading, I think, for all of us. And I'm so happy to have you with us today because I, for one, am super tired of people who are sugarcoating where we are. And I think this is a great moment for plain talk and realistic talk about what it's going to take. Today, my readers actually submitted questions for us, and they're really great questions. So I thought maybe we would just jump right into the soup with them, if that suits you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, let's go. Your most recent column on your Substack is titled Utopias of Violence. And in it, you write that in the long term, the lesson for Americans is that our domestic politics will have to be restructured such that no aspiring tyrant can fight wars of whimsy. I both like and passionately dislike the phrase wars of whimsy because I think it's dead on the money, which is why I like it, and it's dead on the money, which is why I don't like it. But you continue, you move on from Venezuela and obviously Iran, and you write, there is a more pressing concern for Americans. Will that tyrannical emotional state that brought us the war now be applied inside the United States? And of course, there was reporting last week on Stephen Miller and Trump wanting to revoke habeas, wanting to invoke the
Not you, but like when
wanting of what is going to happen to us? What should we be worried about?
Yeah,
First things out of his mouth.
let me start with sugarcoating. I mean, I think sugarcoating is essentially collaboration. So
I'm teaching this fall a seminar on the wise exercise of prosecutorial discretion, which feels a little bit real right now in this moment. I may need therapy if I'm going to have to teach that class. But thank you to everybody who's joining us. I see that you guys are telling us where you're from in the comments. Even someone from Graham Plattner country up in
I'm from Graham Plattner country.
Maine. I don't know if that means that you're down east or if you're in coastal Maine by the beaches, but that's certainly an interesting political race. Our guest today is Timothy Snyder, who needs absolutely no introduction.
Certainly doesn't, does he?
Phenomenal reading, I think, for all of us. And I'm so happy to have you with us today because I, for one, am super tired of people who are sugarcoating where we are. And I think
Oh, me too.
this is a great moment for plain talk and realistic talk about what it's going to take. Today, my readers actually submitted questions for us, and they're really great questions. So I thought maybe we would just jump right into the soup with them if that suits you.
yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's go.
We're still about a minute out.
Your most recent column on your Substack is titled Utopias of Violence. And in it, you write that in the long term, the lesson for Americans is that our domestic politics will have to be restructured such that no aspiring tyrant can fight
Subject matter, finally.
wars of whimsy. I both like and passionately dislike the phrase wars of whimsy because I think it's dead on the money, which is what
Anybody else have the ability to see that Wars of Whimsy is in itself a sugarcoat?
Where the political science is at.
So you think that
because one, and so that for me is actually kind of passivity because that in itself won't be enough. And indeed, like one of the dangers that I see, in fact, this is the thing that maybe the thing that worries me the most, is if you win but you don't know why you won, you're going to lose. So if the Democrats win and they think, okay, we won because of affordability or because of like it's the midterm when we always win, if they win and they don't have a big agenda and they don't come out of the box, you know, in the second week of November and the third week of January with a big agenda, with a big program, with something that communicates to people that they know why they won, then we're going to be in really bad shape because the Democratic Party could discredit itself very quickly, even after having won an election. So that's kind of what I'm worried about. If you think it's just the election and not the process of transforming anger into aspiration, or not the process of thinking about the big structural things that have to change and talking about them, then you're not going to win. But even if you win in a technical sense, you're not going to win in a political sense because
this is he's right, but he's like a quarter right. This is like, why are we talking about Democrats? Where like, and just to take the bait, are we implying that voting Republican was about these values that he's describing? Do we have the ability to see that neither Democrats nor Republicans are really the bulk of the issues here? Nor is it the lack of voters. Okay, let's just, fuck that.
Because the electoral victory in November is just a first step, right? It's just the beginning.
So Democrats, I guess you could say everybody in this country, but particularly Democrats tend to look at the next election. We want to win this one next election. They don't think about the long term. You know, I wrote about this at length.
This is a lawyer speaking in such a way that it's like, let's hear it again.
We want to win this one.
The electoral victory in November is just a first step, right? It's just the beginning.
So Democrats, I guess you could say everybody in this country, but particularly Democrats tend to.
Again, I'm no longer deluded into believing that this is a Democrat or Republican issue. If anybody's watching me, I'm sure they're going like, yeah, we're not convinced either, right? We're kind of looking for answers to. We're also might just want to see what this loser's up to, you know, something like this. But when I actually talk to people, like go outside of this building, and it's like, hey man, what do you think the problems are? We talk about them. You know what I'm saying? And it's usually nothing to do with red or blue.
Look at the next election. We want to win this one next election. They don't think about the long term. You know, I wrote
Is this sugarcoating? Is that the psyop?
about this at length in my book, this notion that you're always building.
You right?
That seems important when you live in a state like Alabama, where every statewide elected official is a Republican. But we know that 20, 30 years ago, it was the other way. And so if we would stop looking at just...
And, you know, and I'm probably not going to do another 25 minutes of this. I'm probably going to speed this along, because I hope the people that actually can see this at this point for what it is. And it's something that I've already prejudged. If you have the ability to believe me. I had no idea who these people were going into this video. Yet, I kind of already knew simply by looking at them. Yeah, that's me doing prejudice stuff. But I also kind of knew, given the subject matter that they were trying to talk about, I also knew, given the kind of more or less superfluous language in which they were teeing up their ideas, as well as recognizing people from various parts of the country. And I knew almost immediately within the discourse of their language, red versus blue, that these people were not worth paying attention to. Like within the first 10 seconds, it was that quick for me. And I hope that it's not a matter of, how do I say this? It's not a matter of my being uneducated. It's not a matter of me being racist or prejudiced to the point where I don't have the ability to listen anymore. No, it's me finally going, I only got so much time in my life. And if these are the current iterations of bots that you got for me at this point, then may I say try much harder. You know, like, this is disgraceful rhetoric with respect to the times we now share together. And I'm sorry to say that this is part of the white privilege that is the real problem of why we are where we all are. Yeah, get ready for a really bumpy ride, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if any of you have read James Baldwin. Do that. He outlines pretty clearly where this country is going. And if people like this don't have the ability to see past skin color yet, then they have no business staying in where they're staying. And let me tell you, they will. I mean, I'm not going to do it. It's just me reading the sign of the times. This country is getting ready to go have a real civil war with itself. And war is really fucking weird and bad. There's no telling what's going to happen. But these people are quite literally fueling the fire. These people, I mean, they're a dime a dozen. We're surrounded by them. This is how they think. This is how they operate. This is part of the system. This is part of the design. You know, they don't have any intention on viewing reality correctly. They fully intend to sit on their white mountains of shitty privilege until the next
election, and think about the next
again,
5 or 6.
Like 5-10 more minutes of this. I got other shit to do. Let's see.
Progress might be possible. Do you think we need to look at coming out of Trump? I mean, I know you do from what you're saying, that we need to think about coming out from Trumpism in that same way. Maybe it's not linear, maybe it's imperfect. Joe Biden won, Trump came back into office. Instead of giving up, people need to stay the course. But if you were...
You know, and how do you suppose we get out of Trumpism? And again, do we have the ability to admit to ourselves that we should never have been deluded by such lunacy in the first place? Who took this person as leadership other than racist goons?
The Democratic Party, I mean, what are the things that you come out of the box with? It seems to me that a big one could possibly be the Equal Rights Amendment, which, if there are Democratic majorities in both houses of Congress, could be adopted by resolution. Trump wouldn't be able to veto it. There are a lot of women's groups advocating for that as a way to start things up. There's also restoration of the Voting Rights Act. There's one of any number of policy changes that we need. What would you do? Where would you go first if you had the magic wand?
Okay, well, first, I just want to agree with the premise and affirm it and extend it that you have to be thinking big and you have to be thinking about the future. And I think it's incredibly important
Great point.
for Democrats not to talk about things like reforming and
Ooh, see, you see how he makes a good point and he immediately just contradicts. It's like they're getting so good with this Inception stuff, but it's also really boring because
pairing.
you can only be gaslit so long before you're like, what smells?
But because what people really hate is the status quo, and I think they hate it in a way that Democrats don't always understand. I think that you have to talk instead about new beginnings and big changes, and work within that framework because nobody wants actually to go back to 2020 or 2012. Nobody wants that. And
so 1950, I would rule that one out too.
Yeah. No, the thing is, like, there's actually no point in the past. So, there's no point in the past that anyone really wants to go back to. Not really, right? So, like, Trump has this magic of like making America great again, but that's all fantasy, and that's a fantasy also which has played itself out. I think it's fair to say. So, I think what you have to do is to try to command the future, and like because the way Trump has worked this is to take the future out of politics. And to make us basically fight about the past, or to fight in the present. And the commanding heights of politics are actually the future. And so I think you have to claim the future. You have to say, not in terms of elections, as you say, but thinking
He's talking like an imperialist.
In terms of like an America which is much, much better than the one we're in now.
We gotta claim the future. If you don't know your past, how do you know what direction you're going? Point we've already made.
And explaining that a much, much better America is possible, which of course it is. And starting from that premise, like reshaping the language that way, because if you come out of the gates and you say, now we're going to repair, now we're going to restore, now we're going to go back to the way things were before Trump got elected, it's not just wrong politically, it's wrong for the country. Like, it's wrong for the soul of the country. We need to do big things. So the two that you
It's just wrong. I hate to hear it. I can't hear it. It's just you're hemming it.
say, but thinking in terms of like an America which is much, much better than the one we're in now. And explaining that a much, much better America is possible, which of
it's going to be possible.
Of course it is. And starting from that premise, like reshaping the language that way, because if you come out of the gates and you say, now we're going to repair, now we're going to restore, now we're going to go back to the way things were before Trump got elected.
Repair, restore, go back to the way things were. We do have the ability to understand language and go, some of those statements are not like the other. I saw what you did when you grouped them in.
It's not just wrong politically, it's wrong for the country. Like, it's wrong for the soul of the country. We need to do big things. So the two that you mentioned, I'm all in favor of. I'm all in favor of the idea that you have to quickly rack up some wins. The idea of winning things, although Trump has worked it because he talks about winning when he loses, and the guy is in fact, I think history will judge him this way, a catastrophic loser who has done more to lose American power than any president ever has. But he's right, and they're right that you have to talk about winning, and you have to rack up the quick legislative victories. And if he tries to veto them, then that's on.
This guy's a Nazi. Fucking blitzkrieg mentality.
Winning when he loses, and the guy is in fact, I think history will judge him this way, a catastrophic loser who has done more to lose American power than any president ever has.
Yeah, cast your demons, buddy.
But he's right, and they're right that you have to talk about winning, and you have to rack up the quick legislative victories. And if he tries to veto them, then that's on them, and you use it to crush him the next time around. But big symbolic things, I would extend from voting rights into corruption, because people really are angry about corruption, and they're not angry enough about Trump probably, but they're angry about corruption generally. And so if you win, you have to be able to say things like, okay, we're going to be the ones who take money out of politics, or we're going to try anyway. Let the other
Can we start with your bank account?
side veto it or vote against it. We're going to try to take money out of politics. We're going to try to get rid of super PACs. We're going to try to make democracy more democratic. And as far as like the big guns, I would be going in terms of investigation and trying to prosecute the very corrupt people who are around the chief executive, who are not enjoying any kind of immunity and have been doing incredibly corrupt things and making just bizarre amounts of money during the first couple years of the Trump administration. I would start with that because you can hook that into corruption, unfair elections, wealth inequality, and social mobility, right? Like, it's not just that you're going for revenge or something, you don't like these people. It's that this is a spectacular way of introducing the things that people care about, which is, we're poor because they're rich, or the electoral system doesn't work because there's too much money, or corruption. So I would try to connect the investigations and the prosecutions to the issue of corruption and wealth inequality.
We live in this fascinating moment where it's always been
It's just like they name the goal, but it's like, why is it so unequal? Explain that to me, guys. You haven't ever said it. Like, this country's founded on slave labor, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, I mean, when's the last time you've gone outside your home and saw some property managers or lawn and maintenance crews? Do they look like, do the people working those jobs look like these people? A third of dudes in America are unemployed.
Republicans who beat the drum about corruption, accusing Democrats of being corrupt, prosecuting Democratic politicians for being corrupt, hammering them over the head with it. And suddenly they've gone a little bit dark on that one. And even if Democrats win both houses back at the midterm elections, Trump will still control the Justice Department. So we've got states attorneys general across the country who are gearing up to do exactly what you say, to go after corruption. Congress can go after corruption with new laws, right? Or simply with the power of the bully pulpit in making sure that they're persistently talking about it. What do you think about this notion that it could end up being state leaders, states attorneys general, maybe state governors in blue states that are driving that drumbeat against corruption, really defining the Democratic Party after the midterms, as opposed to...
Get to it. Let me just quickly read. Sugarcoat it. Yeah, fuck me. Jesus, 36 minutes? Political rallies can be a form of collaboration. Yeah, I've kind of... I hesitate to hate when I I've talked about these ideas because no ideas born in this version of Groundhog's Day are new. Okay, so I'm just going to use but one of the ways the narrative is recaptured over and over, and what I mean by the narrative, which is to say that all education should really do for anyone, is give you the ability to think for yourself. Like, if you wanted to say just go be in nature and live out the rest of your days in nature, do you know how fundamentally at odds those ideas are with just society and civilization as we know it here in the States, right? You really got to ask yourself, why? Why is it like that? Well, because this is an imperial slave structure. Like, that's how we, he said we got to reclaim the language a little bit. This is part of this Inception hamster wheel design that is the circus act that is this white privilege. I don't know if any of you have ever seen the movie Inception, but there's a point where Leonardo goes up to the guy whose mind they're trying to fuck, and they're sitting at a bar, and he's going like, look, I gotta tell you what's going on, because if I don't, you're gonna figure it out, and this whole thing's gonna be like kaput. Which is to say, we can no longer steal from your mind anymore. Well, that idea as it's explained in the movie is simply make them think that you're helping them by introducing the chaos, manufactured consent. It's been understood many different ways throughout time, not just Inception. We use this manufactured consent because the moment we start, think about this as a track race. If we can think about humanity in the sense that we're all running on the track together and we're trying to get somewhere together, which is just to say the next day. We want to be able to think that we can trust the people that we're running with, right? Well, a lot of the people that we're running with are simply trying to farm our legs to get to where they're going. They're riding us, you see what I'm saying? And they're, Plato's allegory of the cave is what I'm really getting to, ladies and gentlemen, because I don't have much more time. And when we fail to recognize what is actually bringing this country down to its knees, which is clearly their privilege, whilst making it seem like they're on our side, like they know what they're talking about, this is the delusion. that allows them to keep farming our ideas, our attention, for our money, which is just, again, a representation of that. And that's it. That's the circus act. That's my TED Talk. I really hope no one takes either Timothy Snyder nor Joy Vance as serious people worth listening to anymore. This is just blatant piggish behavior in some of the worst times that their class has created. Thank you.